Om Shri Matre Namaha. Om Shri Matre Namaha.
Namaste and welcome.
Om Shri Matre.
Namaste, everybody. Welcome to Hindu Parents Forum this morning. Hindu Parents Network is an initiative of CoHNA. CoHNA stands for Coalition of Hindus of North America, and we are a grassroots advocacy organization representing the interests of Hindu Americans and Hindu Canadians. My name is Sudha Jagannathan. I'm a steering committee member of CoHNA. And today we have an exciting guest, and we have invited her to talk about relevance of temples to the Hindu diaspora. The Hindu Parents Network is always trying to find ways to build awareness and keep our young folks connected to the Dharma in ways that are positive for their physical and mental well-being and ability to face any obstacles as they live their lives outside of India or maybe sometimes in India. So with that, let me introduce you to our guest. She's no stranger to anyone. She's Sinu Joseph. And Sinu, welcome to Hindu Parents Network. Thank you. And Sinu namaste. She is a women's health educator, author, TEDx speaker, pioneer of women's health movement in India and globally. She's a published author with a couple of important books, Women in Shabarimala and Ridu Vidya. And I think you're working on another book, I believe. She's also the founder and managing trustee of Maitri Speaks. Maitri Speaks engages in promoting women's health awareness and education around the world. And she's a much sought after speaker. And today she's here to talk about temples and their relevance to our folks. And so Sinu, I just wanted to welcome you once again and to introduce you to the audience, which is Hindu Parents Network and parents and their children, but also other folks. And one of the challenges I think we face, even when our children go to, let's say, Balavihar, Balavikendra, etc., is that I honestly don't know any teenager or a college student who will wake up a morning and say, Mom, Dad, let's go to the temple. Right? So we wanted to hear from you. How do we make an important aspect of our Dharma, which is temples, relevant to young people, so it becomes part of their journey, their life every day? So I would like to start by asking a question. When we were planning this, I had mentioned temples and you said devasthana. So would you please explain devasthana to us, and then we'll go on with other questions.
Namaste, Sudhaji, and thank you for inviting me. We have a bit of a problem in today's discussion, and that is because we are trying to use the intellect to understand a realm which is beyond the intellect. So how do we go about that? To know what is a devasthana is Devata Shakti, because a devasthana is the sthana, the place where the Devata Shakti resides. So what is the Devata Shakti? Shakti is that which is our ability to perceive everything and to carry out all forms of action. So without the anugraha of the Devata Shakti, I can speak, but I might terribly fail in communicating. You may listen, but you might not hear, and we will watch, but we might not see. So the awareness that makes it possible for us to perceive a reality beyond the intellect, beyond the five senses, and makes it easier for us to go through life, both completion of our karmas as well as walking towards moksha, which is really the purpose of taking birth in the human form, that which makes all of this a little effortless is the Devata Shakti. Are they not all around us? Absolutely, they are. But are we capable of accessing it when it's all around us? Mostly, no. What should we do in order to make ourselves capable of accessing that? A lot of sadhana. Now, that could be mantra japa, that could be yoga. But all this, we would say, I don't have the time, I don't know how to do this, I don't know the pronunciations, I don't have space to do yoga. We have so many reasons. So our ancestors understood that this is how we humans are going to be in Kali Yuga. We are going to question, do we even need this? So they came up with this method which makes it absolutely easy for anyone and everyone, whether they have bhakti or not, whether they understand it or not, whether they can do sadhana or not, to simply walk into a space and be able to receive the anugraha of a Devata Shakti. And that place is a devasthanam. This is the simplest way to put it across. I understand that today's conversation is to equip parents to be able to communicate to their children about Sanatana Dharma, about Devasthanas, about Devata Shaktis. So we tend to assume that what we need is a language with which we have to talk to children. But what we often fail to realize is that that language flows when we have a pratyaksha anubhava, a direct experience of whatever it is that we're talking about. So if we ourselves have not been to a devasthana, have not sat there in dhyana, have not experienced what a Devata Shakti is within our physical form, then we will fail to express, explain, communicate, or convince another person, be it a child or an adult. So the first thing in today's conversation, what I want to tell the parents is that I might tell you a number of things, but for you to be able to perceive what I'm saying beyond the words, beyond the intellect, you should do a little bit of an exercise to spend time in a devasthana. And then what you learn will be much more than anything that I can ever tell you. And the way to guide children to that process is also that. Understand what are the simple rules to be followed. For example, going on an empty stomach in the morning after a bath. And make them do that and simply take them to that space. Teach them to become aware, to start turning their observatory skills inward. And then there will be very little that you will have to explain. Maybe they would explain things to you because children are so simple. Children are capable of dropping their conditioning so easily that they can grasp higher reality much faster than those of us who become adults can. So that is the process I would suggest beyond anything that I tell you today, to attempt to have a pratyaksha anubhava of a Devata Shakti in a devasthana of your choice before you think of talking about it to others.
That's a very good advice, Sinu. Um, in everyday life, wherever you are, can a parent also start that at home, right? Before anyone gets when the family wakes up and then gets ready for school or work, take 5 minutes of their time, have a space in the house for this kind of special focus and meditation. Build that as a way to make it into a habit. So having starting it at home, would that make a lot of sense?
Well, definitely, yes. Even the simple act of lighting a lamp, if you keep doing that, that alone would be a wonderful starting point. But as I said, Many of us do not know the technique to invoke a Devata Shakti properly. And because we have not been trained or taught, or somewhere along the way we have lost the Sampradaya based knowledge, we might not be able to do it in a way that is effective enough for someone who's not as subtle as others.
Mhm.
Now, if a yogi or a rishi walks in, and where even if there's nothing, they can sense that there is something in that space. But we are trying to get someone who's completely new to this to experience something that's beyond the intellect. So the best place to give that experience is in a devasthana, because there, in a much more concentrated way, the Devata Shakti is available for you to have an experience if we can drop the mind and approach in the correct manner.
So when we take our children to the temple, I'll tell you, most of the times the parents don't know enough to explain what is this idol, what is the meaning of a carved piece of marble or stone. And if a child asks, what should I do here? Or just fold your palms and just say Om Namah Shivaya or something, a simplest prayer. And we don't take the time to explain afterwards or before. So there is a disconnect there. And so when you go to a temple, how do you even prepare your family, especially with young children, so that they start to understand, here's the meaning, why I'm going in there to have my personal connection, to take part in that Chaitanya, you say, right? So yeah, if you could share some of your thoughts on it.
So I will zoom out a bit so that we understand the context in which it is even necessary to have the anugraha of a Devata Shakti. Because you may question, why do I need it? I'm fine on my own, right? So why do we even need it? You see, as per Sanatana Dharma, there is the understanding that we are all born through many cycles of birth and rebirth. And the reason we take the human form again and again is because we have pending karmas that we have accumulated and built up over the many lifetimes. These are products of our own samskaras, our own habitual patterns. And unless we exhaust this bag of karma, we cannot go towards the next step, which is towards moksha. So, as long as an Atma has a karmic baggage, they would keep being born again and again and again. Now, as an Atma that has taken birth, we are a Jivatma. We have Jiva. We have Prana Shakti, which makes us become born. We go through life, all of us do. And there are things that happen in our life which we are unable to explain. We don't know why we go through those things, both the good and the bad. But especially when the bad happens, there could be phases in our life where we feel that things are completely out of control. And everything that we try, and no matter how hard we try, nothing seems to work. And then we would look at someone else and say, hey, look, that person doesn't even seem to be putting effort. But why is it that they have all the comforts in life? This doesn't look fair. But that is the thing. We are looking at each person of belonging to just this one lifetime. But the truth is that all of us are jivatmas on a journey. This lifetime is just one stop. So either we can go through this lifetime being knocked about because of our own karma of many lifetimes and struggling through every step, or we can access a certain Shakti that is within us. We can enhance it. It's lying dormant now. If we enhanced it, it would play its part in making it easier for us to go through those karmas. Always remember, we cannot skip karmas. We have to endure it. It has to be lived. Some foolish people think that by committing suicide, you can escape the karmic cycle. But actually, that's much worse, because suicide builds up a lot of bad karma. It's the worst thing to do. So the best thing to be done with it is to endure it, to live it. And if you have to do that, the Devata Shakti's Anugraha is what makes it easier. Those of you who may have seen your horoscope, your Rashi chart as per Jyotisha will, and if it is a good Jyotish who is well trained in the traditions, you will see that, oh, there's a pattern to your life. You are not the doer at all. This has all been planned out at the time of your birth. And you will see how it works exactly as is written. So this notion that, oh, I'm going to be in control of my life and I'm going to drive it and I'm going to be the decider is utter foolishness. Because
So you're
everything
saying,
is decided.
yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is that we have to empower ourselves, right? Using the Shakti within us, but recognize that there is a Shakti within us, and maybe and then pair it up with what you said, the Chaitanya all around us, the Deva Shakti are all around us, and harness it like when we go to a temple and make that connection, right?
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
it's a journey. It's a process. So I don't think it's like one day you wake up and say, "Oh, dear son or daughter, let's." I mean, there's no good time to start or embark on these things. But I think the earlier we start, with some understanding of who we are and where we, this environment we live in, and then find tools. I look at it as life skills. This is the best gift you can give to your child by making him or her recognize what you just said, empowering themselves. How do you empower? So the kids don't go try drugs or alcohol or other negative ways to deal with a particular issue. So that makes a lot of sense. So one other question I have is, like, the temples in India usually have, is centered around, let's say, one deity, usually, right? You'll say, oh, this is the Shiva temple, this is the Devi temple, this is Balaji. But the temples in the US are usually everybody, because it's in a confined space. So I was just curious, and other parents have asked me the question too. When you walk into a temple and there is Shiva, Parvati, Ganapati, Mahavishnu, Sri Rama and his family, and everybody there, how do you then, how do you make that individual connection?
Problem of plenty, huh?
Yeah.
Well, there is always the main presiding deity, and then the others are the Parivara Devatas. So the Devasthana is usually named after the main presiding deity. Now, who you connect to is based on your own karmic cycle. I will narrate an incident that happened when I was in this Lepakshi temple. This is on the border of Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. So the presiding deity is Veerabhadra Swami, another name for Shiva. And we walked in there and I'm looking at Veerabhadra Swami, but I am sensing that there is Devi here. And I kept thinking that, oh, this feels like Devi, this feels like Devi. I kept thinking that, but I'm looking at something else. And then we went around for the Pradakshina. And just as we were coming back, in a corner, against a pillar, was Ma Durga, smiling away. And I just held my heart and I said, oh, she was here. How did this happen? And maybe looking at my expression, the Archaka there, that is the name for the Pandit, the Archaka started voluntarily explaining to me that many years ago, there was this lady who used to come and sit in front of Veerabhadra Swami and just meditate. And no one knew who she was. They just thought she's some poor woman who comes and sits there. And one day a yogi walked in and he recognized that she was Durga herself. And then he said, no, we have to make a separate shrine for you. We have to install you like how we have installed Veerabhadra. We have to do that. And she said, no, I'm here just to worship and enjoy the presence of Veerabhadra Swami. So just give me this corner, this pillar. I will merge into this and I will remain here. I don't need a separate shrine. So as per her wishes, they just put her there. And it is said that though the main deity there is this form of Shiva, the one that most people experience the Chaitanyam of is Ma Durga. And all the big queues are lined, in a diagonal way towards that side pillar, because that is where she is. So wherever you are, whoever the devatas are, in your initial stages, you will naturally connect to one or the other. But as you evolve, you will experience that they are all the same.
That's a
But
good
just that in
answer.
the initial stages,
Yes.
some may connect to Venkateshwara, some may connect to Ganapati, some may connect to different forms of Devi. That's because our energies are aligned with one of these.
Yeah.
But as we evolve, as we do more and more sadhana, we will ourselves experience that wherever we go, they're all the same.
Very good. So I'm looking at one of the questions on the comments, and the question is, why should we go to the temple? Isn't God everywhere? If I go to the temple, will I get additional benefits? Can you please explain?
Yes, it's a very good question, and I must answer that. Yes, God is everywhere, but have you made yourself subtle enough to perceive the Devata everywhere? That is the only question. If you take to the path of any of the forms of yoga, then you will be able to sense that. And eventually, that is where we must get to. Whether it is our home or outside or wherever, we should make ourselves such that we can experience the Devata Shakti all around us. It is because we are incapable of it. We need one place where a person who has done great tapas through his Yog Bal is able to invoke the Devata Shakti to reside there, Devasthanam. And the technique that makes this possible is what is called Prana Pratishtha. So every Shakti is a form of prana. So when the Pandit does the technique of Prana Pratishtha, he literally invokes that particular Devata Shakti and makes that Devata Shakti reside there. And then all the rituals, all the offerings, the puja, the archana, they are there in place to maintain that Chaitanyam. And only the person who has done the Prana Pratishtha, because he would be someone who has done a lot of tapas, only he would know what exactly he put in there. What is the nature of it? Is it something that helps us towards moksha, a moksha dham like Shabrimala? If so, there are certain rules because it will affect men differently, it will affect women of reproductive health differently. And then the rules are made. If it is a place which is of Devi, and if the Sankalpa there is, or sometimes it is a natural manifestation, a Swayambhu. So there you cannot create rules. You have to go by what is there and have procedures that help to maintain that Chaitanya. So that is how the rules emerge. And by following that rules, we keep that Chaitanyam intact in that space. Now, it is our intellect that asks us, what do I get by going to a temple? It is such a shameful thing because we want to transact even with that which will help us to go beyond the transactional world. When we enter a devasthana, the only thing to do is to drop the intellect, to make yourself so empty that it is no longer you and Devi. It becomes such that she is with you. She speaks through you. She acts through you. If you can do that, then being able to manifest the things of worldly life is just one small thing that happens for you. But what we do instead is that we go with a list of things to ask. We go there and we say, help me get a new job, help me get a career promotion, help my son get married, help someone who's sick. And we don't realize that we are limiting the ability of what can happen for us to a Devata Shakti because our understanding is so little. We don't see ourselves as an Atma on a journey across many lifetimes. So we don't know at which point we are. So how foolish it is for us to assume that we know what to ask. We don't even know what to ask. That is the truth. So the only sensible thing to do is to drop our intellect, drop our mind, and just request that Shakti to give you an anugraha so that you can deal with whatever life throws at you. Don't say, help me do exactly this, help me do exactly that, because that might not be the best thing for us. And we have a very limited understanding of what has to happen.
It's very true. I just want to share a little thing with you. So, the Attukal Pongala happened last month in India. And I come from a place where, it wasn't a tradition to do it.
I was there a day after the Pongala festival. Yes, so I know.
So what I did was I decided we need to do it in my town in the US. So there is a Hindu temple here, and I went and asked them, hey, can I do an Attukal Pongala here? And they said, fine. So we did all of that. We only had 2 women, myself and another woman. That was fine. Next year, I think we are going to have more. But the Pujari did the Durga Puja. Okay. And at the end, towards the end of it, he said, now I am going to invoke the Bhagavati from Trivandrum to come into this Durga. I mean, that was a very powerful statement he made. And for a moment, I'm getting a little emotional here, but for a moment, I could feel that Bhagavati in there. So when you say make that connection, that is why you go to a temple, because that is where you make the connection.
That is the difference, Sudhaji. What you speak now, there's a different aura to what you are saying, and it is coming from a different space in you. And that is what we need to understand. We have to go beyond the intellect. See, it is something that is within us, lying dormant, waiting to manifest, waiting to grow within us. And when we are there, through that anugraha, what is in starts to come. And that is what the experience is. And once you have that experience, you don't need to go around explaining what it is. And the nature of it is such that even the tiniest bit of anugraha will take you one step further and further and further. And then you're on a journey which happens on autopilot. You don't need to plan it anymore.
Yeah.
But that first step, that you must do. Somehow you must get yourself to take that first step.
Very, very true. And I'm seeing some other questions too. So one of the things about children going to school here in the United States, they don't learn nothing about Sanatana Dharma, and anything they learn is caste, cow, curry, and chaos. Okay, that's all they learn. So in school itself, they are hearing things that are so negative, right? So one of the questions is, how do we even overcome that? And I think you spoke to that. Lighting a lamp at home, doing a little sadhana and meditation at home, the parent doing with the child, right? The parent cannot say, oh, you have to do this. I am going to go watch a movie. That doesn't work, right? It sounds like we should actually participate in it together as a parent and a child. And then when you go to the temple, you're taking that extra step to then connect. So the one question I have is, how about having the Ishta Devata, right? Or a Kula Devam? How does that play into this whole concept of making the connection?
Well, when we are born, we are unaware of what happened to us in the previous lifetimes. But there was always a particular Devata Shakti which got us this far. And it is easiest for us to go through this journey when we connect back to that same Shakti. That is what the Kula Devata is. That is what the Ishta Devata is. And it's okay if you don't really know it. For example, let us say my Kula Devata is a form of Durga, but I'm unaware of it. And I start with Hanuman. Somewhere along the way, Hanuman will also bring you back to Durga. That is how it works. So it really doesn't matter if you know it or not, but the nature of these things, because, we think that they're all separate, but they know that we are also all one, and they too are part of the same Brahman. They are aware of that. So you can go to any of the Parivar Devatas, start from wherever you feel a natural pull. It will finally take you to the very path that you are supposed to go. But if you already know who is the Ishta, who is the Kula Devata, then that is your shortest route, because it starts from that. It makes everything easier. But we should just become aware to not compartmentalize us as, a certain sect and then dismiss everything else. That rigidity should not set in. We should do it with the awareness that at the starting stage we need this, but as we go along, we ourselves will see that they are all the same and they're all part of the same single whole.
The idea of Kula Devam, and I'm from South India, so I know my family temple. We have a trust that manages it. I recently read a story written by Sahana Singh, who said she went with her husband in Rajasthan looking for the Kula Devata of her husband's family, and how emotionally and connecting and enriching it was to know that after so many generations of having lost it. So I'm going to ask the audience, how many of you know your Kula Devata? Just put yay or nay. I think that is a good place to start a conversation, maybe with your children, about your Kula Devata, right? I mean, the child doesn't have to have necessarily a relationship with that Devata, but to know the roots, your roots. I think it's an important thing to kind of get grounding. So I'm asking the audience to do that. But I also see a question here, a couple of questions. One is,
Sudhaji,
yeah, yes.
if I might just add, Kula Devata is not just for us to understand our history and our roots. Many families, when they go through a lot of difficulties in life for long periods of time, they finally go see a Jyotisha. And the Jyotisha will tell them that this is because you haven't connected back to your Kula Devata. See, our energies are linked to the Kula Devata. And if we are disconnected from it, there are a lot of difficulties that we go through. So that is why Kula Devata is the starting point and an essential thing, not just to know our roots or document it, but with the awareness that a lot of problems that we are facing as families will need the Kula Devata's anugraha to see us through it.
Very good. There are some questions about language, not knowing the language and all of that. I'm not sure if language should be a barrier to understanding the principles of Sanatana Dharma. That's my personal feeling. The learning of the mantra, obviously, the mantras and japas and all that, even if you take one mantra, if you go to a guru, get one mantra, that is always going to be in Sanskrit. It can be very simple. Or if you just say Om Namah Shivaya, you can't translate it in English. That's still a Sanskrit Om Namah Shivaya, right? So I don't know if language should be a barrier and if that should hold anybody back. What do you think, Sinu?
So when we started this discussion, I said the inherent difficulty is that we are trying to understand things beyond the intellect by using the intellect. So if what we are trying to perceive is beyond the intellect, what role is there of language? What role is there of language? There are many ways of doing it. Mantra is one of the ways. Yoga is another way. Bhakti, which does not require you to talk, but just intensely feel a Devata Shakti. That is another way. Within yoga, there are so many forms. There is Karma Yoga. As you go through your worldly life, do it with Vairagya without attaching yourself as a doer, but rather just as an instrument of a Devata. That is Karma Yoga. What language do you need there?
Very, very true.
The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and the Ashtanga Yoga, what language do we need there? If you'll need language if you want to become a scholar, if you want to write or you want to make talks. But to experience a Devata Shakti, we don't need language. In fact, it is an advantage because we learn to keep our mouth closed and simply try to experience it through our body.
Right. Yeah. There is a question, an interesting question. When we say devasthana, does that only refer to, I guess this is how I'm understanding, does that only refer to the Chaitanya or the Shakti in old temples? What about the new temples? And I don't know, I mean, is there a difference? A temple, when it is constructed, I think it's constructed per the principles of temple construction. What do you have to say, Sinu?
Well, if there is a person who has done intense tapas on a mountain top and there is no temple there, then there is a chaitanyam there of that person, what they have left behind. But so the question is, how much are we capable of sensing? There are these beautiful, majestic temples in Tamil Nadu, built as per the Agama tradition. So there is the Vastu Purusha Mandala. You see the entire format as given in the text, built beautiful, massive temples, exceptional, extraordinary. And then we go to Kerala and you enter, and there is the Devata, and that's equally powerful. And then you go to some place where there is just a tree, but underneath that tree, there is so much of intense vibrations because some sage at some point sat there in tapas. So, what makes that place unique is what a particular human, a particular jivatma in human form was able to leave behind through his tapas. That is what we experience. Of course, the building and the construction being a certain way greatly aids us, aids more people to receive that. For example, not all of us can go on the mountaintop and experience that, but someone who's sensitive enough to these things can. So, if we built a temple around that, more people can access that more easily. But the essence of what is in that place is directly connected to either the Swayam Vyakta, the Swayambhu, something that is already present. So many of the Shivalingas are Swayam Vyakta. They were already there. Nobody remembers or knows how it landed there. So there is a Chaitanyam by nature. Then there are the Manushya Devalayas, which is where we go and put something. Then there are those Devalayas, Devasthanas, where the Rishis, Parshurama, Agastya Muni, they went and installed something through intense tapas. So those places are very powerful. So even in today's time, if there is a person who can do that sort of tapas and through that do the prana pratishtha, it would have a very intense effect. And the continuation of the puja, of the rituals by so many devotees over so many years, that is why we say generally old temples, because for so many hundreds of years, people have been maintaining and adding to that Chaitanya. But that does not mean that a newly formed temple would not be the same. It can be. It depends on how the puja is done, how the rituals are done, who's the person, how powerful is their tapas when they did the prana pratishtha. And never forget your role in how subtle you can make yourself to experience all of this.
That actually brings back the temples in the US are fairly modern, right? Every day there's a new temple being constructed. But they are all constructed according to the principles of, I think you call it Agama Shastra, right? All of that. So I feel like based on what you just said, when we go to the temple and do our prayers, we are building or adding on to the Chaitanya as we are partaking of it, right? So 100 years from now, 200 years from now, if these temples are still lasting, we would say, oh my God, that Guruvayurappan temple in Houston, or the Devi temple here, or the Shiva temple in Concord, California, oh my God, it is so powerful, right? Because the power is sounds to me, it's a give and take. It's a give and take between the devotee and the deity, seems to me. So whether it's a new temple or not, I think we can still partake and contribute to that Chaitanya. That's how I'm understanding what you said.
That's true.
Yeah. There is another question that says, in being in the US or anywhere outside India, when something happens in India, how do we align it with here? I can only give one example. So that Atukal Pongala, when we did here, it's on a Thursday. It was on the 17th, I think, February. And so we consulted the temple in India, and they said, we are going to do it at 10:30 a.m. Thursday 17th. You do it the same time. So 10 a.m. the 17th in India is actually nighttime here the previous day, but we didn't care. He said, doesn't matter. So we did it in the temple at 10:30 a.m. on the 17th. Okay, there might be an offset, but the point is that is a festival in India. We are making that connection to that festival. through what is available in the US. That's how I feel it about it. Sinu, what do you have to say on it?
Well, that is the thing. It all depends on how powerful our own tapas is to make that happen for ourselves, right? So when Navratri happens in India, people who are sitting outside India also connect to Devi during all those days. They also do the sadhana. There is the Kamakya temple in Assam, where once a year it is understood that Devi menstruates, and all those who live around Kamakya temple, those women also undergo menstruation at that same time. I've explained this in my book about how it is a time where the earth, Mother Earth, goes through a certain cycle. But then that should have been limited to those in that geographical location. After I visited Ma Kamakya temple, and I live in Bangalore, which is quite away from Assam, every year, when Ma Kamakya's menstruation happens in the form of the Ambubachi festival, I, sitting in Bangalore, my period starts that month on that same date. And sometimes it goes through such a shift of maybe even a week just to align with that, because I'm always thinking of her during that time. I'm always connecting to Ma Kamakya at that time. So, yes, a lot of things become effortless when there is a geographical connection. But if you can connect beyond those boundaries, because never forget that prana shakti, prana is the base on which all our thoughts, emotions, and everything else rests. So if you can connect at the level of prana, then geographical location does not matter. We've all heard of distant healing, pranic healing. The person is not even in the presence of each other, of the healer and the patient are not even in the presence. How does that happen? They connect through the medium of prana, of vibrations. In quantum physics, we talk about how a particle also exists as the wave. When it exists as the particle, it is matter, it is physical. We see it as a thing. But that same thing also exists as a wave. In its wave form, it is prana. So instead of connecting to the matter as the geographical physical location, that same thing, if you connect to its wave pattern, you've connected beyond the boundaries of geography.
That's a very powerful thought, and I think it's something we all need to absorb. And understand the connections beyond geographical boundaries, beyond time even. When you said we visited Kamakya temple a few years ago, and you're still in alignment with the cycles of Kamakya Devi. So I think if you just visit, walk away, it was a tourist kind of a thing, maybe that power is not there so much. But if you visit and make the connection from a spiritual point of view, sounds like the Devi's blessings continue. Is that right?
Yes, see, it's not in this whole realm. Our approach should not be one of conquering or getting the anugraha. It should be one of making ourselves dissolve and merge into that. If we go with that mindset and don't ask for anything and just shed ourselves while we are there, then we merge into it. A part of it stays with us. There is this other temple, the Garbha Rakshambigai temple in Tanjavur, I think, where Devi is in a form that helps women who are struggling to conceive. They have a website, garbharakshambigai.com or .org. You can look it up. And if you go there, of course, that it really works. Every woman who's gone there and struggled and had a problem found that she was able to conceive. There's a science to how the temples work. I've written about this in my Shabrimala book. But they also have the option that if you can't physically go there, see her image, connect to her, listen to this mantra, and they will send the prasadam. And the same thing can work for you even if you can't go there. So it is all a question of how deeply we are able to connect beyond the boundaries of geography. If we can tune ourselves to connect beyond geography, then it is possible. It is only our inability, not the lack of strength of the Devata Shakti. That's something we should be aware of.
I can relate another personal story. I didn't have children for a long time. And it wasn't a big thought in my head. It was just one of those things. And I was in India at one time, and my mother-in-law and my mother were with me. They took me to Manarshala, which is a great snake temple in India. And I'm just sharing this so the audience knows that this personal connections and the family's belief in these things do contribute to good outcomes. I went there and we did a prayer. 10 years later, I had a little daughter, right? And so every year they told me I have to take her there. And what they told me was that this child belongs to us. This child belongs to the temple. What it made me realize that I have no claim to my children. I cannot say they are my children. I'm just a caretaker on behalf of the Devi or the Deva or whatever. It was a very powerful thought for me, So when you say there are these temples, and you also mentioned in one of our other talks I listened to, there's a temple where people go to get relief from diabetes and all of that. I mean, it's good to know. I wish there would be more people who participate in the field studies and the kind of work you do, Sinu, so we can have. I'm not saying everybody who needs, click here and go there. And that's not the point. I was just wondering, all of this knowledge and we don't know. I mean, I don't know whether we need to have that knowledge. I can just go to Manarshala or I can go to my local Devi temple and pray for the same, and the same thing can happen. Of course, we also know of gurus who come to the US too, and people with such faith go there and ask. Again, you said don't have a list of transactional things, but people ask. I don't have a child, give me a child, and things happen. So I think it, like you said, it's the empowerment of our own, the self, the energy we have inside us, connecting to the one outside in whatever format, and then something positive coming out of it, right? So I'm again looking at some questions about how do I find my Kula Devata. Another question is when people say instead of building temples, shouldn't we build schools? What do you say? Instead of building temples, let's build more schools. The social justice. See, this is where our young people also want to know. Where is the social justice aspect of temples? That's how they want to engage.
So the first question of where do we know who is our Kula Devata, let me answer that. If you are able to trace your ancestral roots, that is one way. You can just go on that journey and find out. But the other way is, excuse me, is if you have access to a traditional Jyotisha, they can look at your birth chart and tell you who the Kula Devata is. And this is not just a person who knows how to pull out the chart from the computer, but someone through tapas who has siddhis that they can know who the Kula Devata is. So we have people like that in Bharat, of course. So that is why I say when we feel that, oh, everything in Sanatana Dharma is lost, the books are being burned, the libraries are gone, what will we do? How do we revive? We get into that panic mode. What I always say is that nothing is lost. Nothing is lost. All knowledge. Upanishads were not written by people who read some books. They were revealed to humans when they were able to go into the states of samadhi. Devi shows these texts. So through sadhana, one can always get back what is lost. So never worry that I need to, oh, this is not documented. Document it if you like, but never be in that panic state that we will lose this knowledge. Nothing is lost. Everything resides in different frequencies and different tattvas. If you are able to tune into it, we can access it. So try and find a person who can tune into that on your behalf, and they will be able to guide you on towards who your Kula Devata is. The second question, it comes from a place because we don't see a difference in between buildings. We think the school and the temple and the church and the mosque, they're all buildings and they're all the same thing. Well, that's the whole difference. There is a science to the way a devasthana is constructed as per the Agama Shastras. And through that science, when something is built, every corner, every rock, every stone, every pillar has prana shakti, has the devata shakti residing there. So when you walk into that space, you are walking into the body of a devata shakti. So when you go to a temple built as per the Agama Shastra, start observing this. The entrance tower, the main entrance tower, that would be the tallest. Because if you picture the Vastu Purusha, who is used to depict how a temple is built, because the temple is literally built along the body of a Vastu Purusha, lying down horizontally. So if you picture the Vastu Purusha lying down, his feet is up at this point, and this is his head that is down. And it is the same proportion of head to feet that we see between the Garbhagudi and the entrance tower. So the entrance tower, when you step in there, you are entering through the feet of that Shakti. And then there is the Dvajastambha, which is the genital organ. And then you have the next place, which is the navel. And there is something else there. And then you have the region of the heart, which is mostly the open space. And then finally, in the space here between the eyebrows, where we wear the kumkum, is where the Devata Shakti is installed through the technique of Prana Pratishtha. This is not done in any other religious building or normal building. So Hindu Devasthana, if it is destroyed, for example, if the idol is broken through vandalism or something else, that entire balance of Chaitanya is disturbed. What is Chaitanya? I saw someone asking that question. So when the technique of Prana Pratishtha is done, and the Devata Shakti is invoked, the person who does it holds a particular intention, a particular sankalp. And according to that sankalp, there is a certain quality in that place. That quality is called Chaitanyam. So we'll say the Chaitanyam of Shabrimala is such that it takes us towards moksha. The Chaitanyam in Garbharakshambigai temple is such that Devi will help those who are struggling with reproductive issues. So Chaitanyam is the nature of that which is present in a Devasthana by virtue of Prana Pratishtha with a particular sankalp. So the same deity, Ayyappa, is there in many temples, but the sankalp in each temple is different. Therefore, the Chaitanyam in each temple is different. And based on the Chaitanyam, the rules are different. So you can do without a school. The school doesn't do anything special for you. It is the people who go there and teach. You know, in the olden days, every town, every village was part of the plan of the Devasthana. And all the people had that same personality as that of the Devata Shakti. Even today, during the Shabrimala Yatra and in my book when I went, certain temples like the Achan Kovil temple, where Shasta was in the form of a king, he is full of Aishwarya. All the people there also lived very comfortable, happy lives. In those temples where Shasta was like a yogi, like a brahmachari, you would find that there were many people like that in that vicinity. So the Chaitanyam in the temple will influence the quality of life of those in the vicinity in a very subtle way. It was a standard practice. Even today it is in Kerala, for example, where my own roots are, that every day you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you go to the nearest temple. That sets you for the rest of the day because the temple has a direct impact on your physiology. It works on your body via chakras. And that's a separate and a detailed topic I've covered in other talks and in my books. But the temple actually has a direct impact on you without you doing anything and just showing up. All you need to do is show up. Does a school have the same effect if you just showed up? Even a church and a mosque will not have that effect. But that is why a Devasthana is not just a building. It is a place where the Devata Shakti Sthana, they reside there. And that is not to be taken lightly.
Very, very good. I think for parents in the audience, I think that is how you need to explain to your children the prana pratishtha, the prana in the deities, and what you said, the difference between a regular building and the temple, and how the temple, the Vastu Purusha, these are all honestly, I have to tell you, never learned any of these things in my life. It's only in the last few years I'm interested, I'm curious, I'm learning. But I'm thinking that, oh my goodness, our children should be exposed to this. This is such a wonderful wealth of information about who they are and what they can be beyond a BA degree, a PhD, or whatever it is. I think this knowledge is so critical. Thank you for that. I'm going to go to one other question. It's actually an interesting question. It says, please explain when some people of certain jatis or varnas are not allowed into certain temples, what is the history around it? And I'm not sure if a Devi or Devata cares who they are, but what do you say about that?
It's an important question, and it is not a question of history, it is a question of science. And that is why we have never understood it properly, because we don't realize that there is a science to it. Now, let me tell you the biology of Varnas. This has never been spoken about before because everyone is wary about the controversy that it can draw up. But each of us, and I don't mean that a person remains as one Varna their whole life. We move through Varnas. And as we change biologically and spiritually, we move through Varnas. So, what is that? To understand this, it requires us to have some knowledge of chakras. There are more than 108 chakras within the human body. A chakra is a subtle junction where several nadis meet. A nadi is a subtle channel that carries prana. So when many of these channels that carry prana meet, we have a chakra, which is an enormous powerhouse of prana. Now, along the spinal column are 6 of the major chakras. Each chakra has a particular quality that it brings out in your personality, in your emotion, in the way you live your life. If there is sufficient prana in that chakra, you are a certain way. If there is insufficient prana in that chakra, then you have weakness in the functions that chakra regulates, because every chakra is connected to your endocrine gland and organs of your body. Based on which of the chakras in our body we primarily operate from at different stages of life, we each have different gunas, different qualities. And based on that, certain varnas. Let me take the example of a woman itself. In our initial years, just before menarche, just before period starts, every human, all of us, the lowest chakra at the base of the spine, the Mooladhara chakra. That is located just below the spinal column, just below the tailbone, and it is connected to our excretory organs. So it regulates all those functions. At a subtler level, the Mooladhara chakra is what helps us with basic functionality of health and well-being. If it is weak because there isn't enough prana there, the things that we call roti, kapada, and makan, the basic necessities of life become difficult. So people who are struggling with that, they are operating at the level of the Mooladhara chakra. Then the next stage of a woman's life, when her period starts, that is when the Swadhisthana chakra comes into play, which is in the region of the reproductive organs. She needs prana to be in that region for her menstrual cycle and reproductive health to work well. It is necessary for her. As she moves one step higher, when she gets married and gets pregnant, it is the Manipura chakra at the navel that comes into play. At that stage, when a woman is going through pregnancy in a sattvic way, she develops a natural detachment from worldly and material things if she is not confused by the conditioning of society. She just turns inward into the life that is happening within her, the quality of vairagya bhava that naturally sets in at the Manipuraka chakra. And then when she becomes a mother and starts to breastfeed, it is the Anahata chakra at the heart which opens up, from where compassion and love flows effortlessly for her. She remains there through all her menstrual and reproductive years. And after menopause, through sadhana, she goes higher up to the Vishuddhi and then Agnya Chakra. So when women are operating in the space of the two lower chakras, the Mooladhara and the Swadhisthana, you can consider them as being the Shudra Varna. When they are in that space, they cannot pull prana upwards. So if they go to a Shiva temple whose nature is to pull prana upwards, it would affect their menstrual and reproductive health. So many women struggle from menstrual problems because they take to intense Shiva-related moksha process, which is not for them until menopause. So not just women, any of us who need to be in samsara need strong Mooladhara. And that is when we operate as the Shudra Varna. As we operate from the Swadhisthana chakra, in the material world, that is where our capability to work, to generate wealth resides. You know, in the Swadhisthana, Vishnu and Lakshmi reside. That is where all the Aishwaryam is. And that is where we become the other Varna. The Vaishyavan, the trading community, they are people who operate largely from Swadhisthana chakra. As you go higher in the Manipuraka chakra, in the spiritual path, it gives the quality of Vairagya. In the material path, this is where you become the warrior. Career, ambition, battling ability, all of that. And that is the Kshatriya Varna. You need the Manipuraka chakra to be very strong to be of the Kshatriya sort. The Kshatriya Varna also connects to the Anahata when they are kings, because it is not enough to be able to battle. You need to take care of others. So it is a combination of the Manipuraka and the Anahata. And then when you become all about jnana, about teaching, about accessing the higher knowledge from the source, which is Saraswati itself, those are people who have to raise the prana to Vishuddhi and Agnya. They have to keep it there. That is who we call the Brahmana Varna. And because their prana is there, they cannot fight. They can't be warriors. Their Manipuraka is weak. They depend on society because their Swadhisthana is weak, so they can't do regular work. And they literally go with a begging bowl and expect and hope that society can feed them, because their Manipuraka chakra, their Mooladhara is also weak. So Varna is basically at different stages. Which of your chakras are you operating from? It could be the same person, mind you, who goes through these different phases. And therefore, at each phase when they are, the rule is different. Shabrimala is for those who operate from this space. Because if you go to Shabrimala, it pulls prana upwards, and those who need it for the other functions will suffer. People go to Kailash and Manasarovar. If they are in samsara, the first change they will experience is problems in domestic life. So those who are in samsara need the lower chakras, need prana to remain there. And that is why I said it is not the history that we have not understood. It is the science that we have miserably failed to understand.
Yeah, you know.
The rules exist because of this. For each person, based on where we operate from, the temple has a certain effect. And if we are not aware of that, it will just throw us out of balance. You want to go and work, you want to be with your wife and children and take care of them, but you've developed vairagya. What happens to your family?
Very true. I think it's understanding where you are in your life journey and who you are at that moment. That is a decision for oneself. And nobody else can say what you are. All these external kind of differentiations that have happened, I think it has a different context altogether. But from the Sanatana Dharma and the science and the logic and the reasoning behind it, sounds like we have a very sound principle behind it, and it's our job individually and collectively to understand that. So, Sinu, thank you for that. I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. And our question was why Shivalinga can be touched and why Vishnu Murthy cannot be touched. I did not know that. And I don't know.
No, that's not true. That's not true. There are many Shiva temples where you cannot. So most of the temples which follow the agamas in South India, for example, you cannot go beyond a point. Only the male Shanti in Kerala, we say male Shanti. Only they are allowed to go. But wherever it is a Swayambhu Linga, self-manifest form, as I have seen in near Kamakhya, the Umananda temple, you can go all the way to the Garbhagriha. You can touch and you can do that. So it is not a general rule at all. It differs from temple to temple based on the nature of the Devata Shakti. Is it Swayam Vyakta? Is it something that a human has installed? What is the nature of the Chaitanya? Based on that, it differs. Please do not generalize it.
Thank you. I think we may have just time for one more question. I don't know if I missed any. I think I caught most of the questions that folks had here. But so maybe to conclude, what is in a few sentences or a few words? I think this is a conversation we are just beginning with you, okay? I think we have to have more conversations because it is starting to kick off a new way of looking at things. And you saw a lot of the questions you said has to do with the intellect and not, otherwise. So I'm looking forward maybe to planning something else later. Maybe when your new book comes out, the science behind 10 temples. I think that is what you're trying to know. Yeah.
I will not write such a book because there's so much danger in that, and we all will tend to just intellectualize it. I already get asked if I want this chakra to be energized, which temple do I go to? Please do not make our devasthanas a scholarly work. It is kept the way it is for a reason. Only those who have the anugraha of Devi should be able to know this, and certain things we must not share with all. So I'm not writing any such book. At some point, if I do write, it will only be if Devi has given me very clear-cut instructions and permissions to do it. I will never try to do it from a scholarly space. So such a book is not happening anytime soon.
Okay. All right. I misunderstood. No, but your talks on everything, that's why I listen. I want to understand for myself, right? A lot of the things that we do. And I would encourage everybody in the audience to do the same. And so, Sinu, maybe in conclusion, to the diaspora, to the parents, and to the children, what would you say that we embark on?
There are a lot of comments in the audience about how I have embraced Sanatana Dharma. So I just want to say this to all of you. Before we take birth in the human form, the Jivatma chooses the family, the womb really, where it decides to come into this world based on its karmas. There is a connection. And a Jivatma that is born into the womb of someone who is either in Bharat or outside Bharat but connects to Sanatana Dharma is a Sanatani. So don't confuse yourself with the certificate given by the municipality. You are not a product of the municipality. So if you are a Hindu parent, already so much anugraha has happened for you. There's already that grace that exists. And you just need to take that first step and everything will unfold. That first step, it could be lighting a lamp. It could be through practices of yoga. It could be through Jnana Marg, trying to read and understand these things, all the while knowing that you should understand beyond the intellect. And the easiest of all is by going through a temple. Start somewhere, start anywhere. If you are born in a Hindu family, there is so much anugraha already there with you. Tap into it. Just make that first step and you will see how so many things will transform in your life. It will just unfold one after the other. You're already blessed. So make use of that, tap into that.
Thank you. That was wonderful. But like I said, I think we may have to come back to you for another session on more questions. But to all the parents and families out there, thank you for joining. And I'm going to leave you with one word. Any comments on thoughts that you have, please contact us, CoHNA.org or HinduParentsNetwork.org. And those of you who know your Kula Devata, write to us. I'm happy to write my story about finding out, the story behind my Kula Devata. I always knew the temple. I would go there, but I didn't know how it started. What was the reason for a Devi to be there? And some family member did share that with me. So I'm going to challenge all the parents. Those of you who know you're blessed already, like Sinu has said, share the story with your children. And those of you who don't know, enlist your children to go on the journey of finding out who your Kula Devata is, because it is going to be critical to the well-being of your family, well-being of your person, and the future generation. So with that, I leave you all. And Sinu, so grateful to have you amongst us today. And thank you for your knowledge. And I have to say, like I told you, I'm much more older than you, so I bless you. Ayurarogya Saukyam.
Thank you, Suraji. Thank you for your blessings and for this opportunity, for this beautiful interaction. I would be happy to come again whenever you call and Devi gives me permission.
Sure. Thank you all, and everybody have a good day. The daylight savings in the United States happened today, so consider that as a new beginning for you, your family, and for every day. Thank you all.